Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're wrapping things up, our exploration of this really compelling book. We're getting into the final chapter, which is called Find the Black Swan.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And for anyone just tuning in, our goal here is pretty straightforward. We take these, sometimes dense sources, pull out the really key stuff, and serve it up. So it's informative, but also hopefully engaging. Helps you get up to speed fast.
Exactly. And this deep dive, well, like all of them, it's really designed for the learner. The person who wants to grasp these big ideas efficiently, see different sides, and get those sort of aha moments without drowning in detail.
And our mission for this last chapter, it's very specific. Understanding these black swans, but specifically how they work in negotiation. We want to really unpack these hidden, unexpected bits of info, the real unknown unknowns, and look at how finding them can genuinely change the game, lead to those big breakthroughs.
Okay, so let's dive in. The chapter kicks off with a pretty dramatic story, doesn't it? The William Griffin hostage crisis back in '81.
Yeah, it's intense. A really stark, tragic situation, unexpected violence, the hostage Margaret Moore being killed on a deadline,
Yeah.
and Griffin himself eventually dying. It immediately shows you things don't always follow the script.
Right. And it's a perfect illustration, really, of this black swan concept. The author uses it to introduce them as these, hidden, unforeseen factors, the unknown unknowns that can just completely flip a negotiation on its head.
Exactly. It makes the point early on that breakthroughs often happen for the people who can spot these things, these black swans, and, use them strategically. It really forces you to question your own assumptions going in.
Because the assumption there was hostage takers want something specific, money, escape, whatever. Griffin didn't fit. And to get a handle on this term, black swan, the book gives that classic historical example.
The actual black swans in Australia.
Right.
So for centuries, everyone knew all swans were white. It was just fact, based on all observable evidence. The idea of a black swan was, impossible.
Until they found them.
Until they found them in Australia. And that single discovery, that completely unexpected piece of data, it just overturned centuries of accepted knowledge. It's such a powerful way to show how limited our view can be when it's only based on past experience.
And it's not just historical curiosities or, rare birds. The book connects this idea to really significant modern events, things like Pearl Harbor, the rise of the internet, 9/11, the financial crisis.
Events that maybe in hindsight you can see some faint signals, some markers, but they were largely unpredicted and had massive game-changing consequences. And that's the core idea, right? They defied prediction based on what we thought we knew.
Exactly. And it reinforces that point from Tahl that the author brings in. Black swans aren't just unlikely events. They actually show the kind of uselessness of trying to predict the future only based on the past. They operate completely outside our normal expectations.
Yeah, they're fundamentally unexpected.
Okay, so with that idea established, the chapter gives us a really useful framework for thinking about information in a negotiation. Known knowns, known unknowns, and these unknown unknowns, the black swans. Can you break those down a bit in a negotiation context?
Sure. So known knowns are the straightforward facts you're aware of. You know your counterpart's name, you know their opening offer, maybe you know something about their past deals, stuff you can list out.
Right, the things that are definitely on the table, you see them clearly.
Exactly. Then you have the known unknowns. These are the possibilities you know exist, but you don't know the specifics. Like, the other side might have a deadline, but you don't know when it is. Or, they might be talking to other people, but you don't know who. You're aware of the uncertainty.
Okay, so there's a variable, you just don't know its value yet. And then the curveballs.
Then the unknown unknowns, the black swans. These are the things you haven't even conceived of, things you wouldn't even think to ask about. But if they came out, they could change everything. The book gives that great example. What if the person you're dealing with secretly wants the deal to fail? Maybe they're about to jump ship to a competitor.
Whoa, yeah. You'd never guess that unless something seemed really off.
Exactly, and that loops right back to the Griffin case, doesn't it? The FBI went in with their standard playbook, their known knowns about hostage situation.
And it completely blinded them. Their expectations basically trapped them.
Precisely. Their experience, which is usually helpful, created this rigid frame that stopped them seeing the really critical, unexpected signals. They were focused on the why they expected, not the why that was actually happening.
Which brings us to those clues in the Griffin case that were missed. Looking back, it's painful to see.
It really is. First, that bank employee answering the phone and just hanging up, that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Hostage takers usually want to talk, make demands. That silence was a huge deviation.
A red flag that wasn't seen as one, and then the report about the double homicide nearby.
Yeah, initially dismissed, maybe unrelated. But if you put that violence together with the lack of communication,
The picture starts to look very different, much darker.
definitely, a pattern emerges that's way outside the norm.
Hmm.
And maybe the biggest clue, the most direct black swan, was that long, rambling note Griffin left. No demands, but that one line.
After the police take my life, chilling.
Absolutely chilling. But because the note didn't fit the demands model, that clear statement of suicidal intent wasn't given the weight it deserved. If they'd put all those pieces together, the silence, the nearby violence, that note, his real motive, wanting the police to kill him, would have been undeniable.
So the big lesson, the takeaway from that tragedy, what is it?
I think the core insight is, when things just don't add up, when the story doesn't make sense within your usual framework, that's a massive signal that your framework itself might be the problem. You're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole because of your expectations.
It really hammers home the need to approach every single situation fresh, doesn't it? With an open mind.
Totally. You have to let your experience inform you, sure, but not blind you. It's about staying flexible, adaptable, having that beginner's mind the book talks about, being willing to see what's actually there right now, emotionally and informationally, rather than just what you expect to see.
Don't overvalue past experience to the point where it obscures present reality.
Exactly. And that leads into this really interesting idea the author puts forward, the hypothesis of 3 black swans. What's that about?
Yeah, it's quite a claim. The author suggests that in every negotiation, each side is holding on to at least 3 pieces of information, 3 black swans that, if the other side knew them, would fundamentally change everything.
3. In every single one. And the author says that this isn't just theory, it's based on their actual experience, what they've seen happen again and again.
That really reframes negotiation, doesn't it? It's not just moves and counter moves. It's a search for these hidden game changers.
Absolutely. It suggests there's this hidden depth, these potential turning points, lurking beneath the surface of almost any interaction. Finding them requires a different mindset altogether. It's more about discovery than just transaction.
Okay, but if they're so powerful, these black swans, why are they so hard to find? What makes them so elusive?
Well, the book points out something fundamental. We're all kind of blind in our own way. We don't know what we don't know. The biggest hurdle is often that we don't even know the right questions to ask to uncover this stuff.
Right. How do you look for something when you don't even know what it looks like or even that it exists?
Exactly. And our usual methods, research, asking standard questions, often just reinforce what we already think. We look for confirmation, not for the genuinely unknown. We stay within our comfort zone of knowledge.
So how do we break out of that? How do we actually start unearthing these things? What does the book suggest?
The key is becoming someone who's good at digging into the unknowns, adapting to them, even using them. It means actively questioning everything, asking tons of questions, even ones that seem a bit random. Paying super close attention to body language, nonverbals, and crucially, voicing your observations out loud.
Like saying, it seems like, or I'm sensing.
Precisely. Feeling for the truth behind the words, noticing the small inconsistencies. The big mental shift is moving away from trying to verify your expectations and towards being radically open to whatever the actual reality is, even if it's uncomfortable or confusing.
Okay. And the author's company apparently made a specific shift in their approach, a key question they always ask now.
Yeah, they adopted this constant internal question. Why are they communicating this specific thing to us right now? It's about focusing intensely on the immediate communication, the timing, the choice of words, and trying to understand the motive behind that specific moment.
Like walking a tightrope, the book says. Focus on the next step, not just the finish line.
Exactly that analogy. Because that next step, that seemingly small detail right in front of you, could be the clue that leads you to a massive black swan.
And the weird thing is, these black swans might seem totally trivial at first glance.
Totally. Or the person holding the information might even realize how important it is. They might mention something casually that, to you, unlocks the whole puzzle.
Okay, so this connects directly to leverage. The chapter talks about how black swans interact with the different types of leverage. Remind us what those are again.
Right. So leverage, fundamentally, is about your ability to inflict loss or withhold gain. But the crucial point the book makes is that perceived leverage often matters more than actual leverage. It's about who feels like they have more to lose if the deal falls through. And that feeling can shift.
It's psychological as much as factual?
Very much so. It's fluid. The three types the book discusses are positive, negative, and normative leverage.
Okay, let's unpack those. Positive leverage first. That sounds like the good kind.
Yeah, positive leverage comes from your ability to give the other side something they want. If you're selling something they need or you have skills they value, that's positive leverage. The example given is having multiple buyers interested in your business. That definitely gives you leverage.
It's the carrot. Makes sense. What about negative leverage? The stick.
Negative leverage is your power to make the other side suffer, usually based on threats, like, if you don't agree, we'll go to the press or we'll sue. But the author really warns against using direct threats.
Why's that? Seems like it could be effective.
It can backfire badly. Direct threats often create resentment, make the atmosphere toxic, and crucially, they make the other person feel attacked and lose their sense of autonomy. That usually just makes them dig their heels in.
So how do you use negative leverage without, blowing things up?
The suggestion is to use labeling. Instead of threatening, you label the potential negative consequence in a neutral way. Like, it seems like avoiding negative publicity is really important to your brand. It highlights the risk without being overtly aggressive.
Ah, okay. Much more subtle. And the third type, normative leverage.
Normative leverage is about using the other party's own standards, norms, or stated values against them. If you can point out an inconsistency between what they say they believe and what they're doing, that gives you leverage. Nobody likes looking like a hypocrite.
So, if a company talks big about sustainability, but their offer seems to require cutting corners.
Exactly. You can say, help me understand how this aligns with your commitment to sustainability. And this ties directly into discovering black swans related to their core beliefs, their religion, as the book calls it.
Right, understanding their religion, their worldview. The example with the farmer, Watson, in D.C. was fascinating. It wasn't just about leverage points like attention or his military background.
No, those were factors, sure. Positive leverage, his desire for attention, and normative, his military code. But the real breakthrough, the key black swan, came from understanding his deep Christian faith, his core operating system.
And specifically that FBI agent, Winnie Miller, realizing the importance of the dawn of the third day for him.
Exactly. That specific concept held profound meaning within his religious framework. By understanding that, they could frame the request for surrender in his terms, in a way that resonated with his deepest values. It showed respect for his religion, and that respect opened the door to a peaceful outcome. It shows you need to understand what truly drives someone.
It's about speaking their deepest language. The chapter also mentions the similarity principle. How does finding common ground fit in?
Well, the basic idea backed by psychology is that we trust people more if we see them as similar to us, part of our in-group. Even superficial similarities, liking the same sports team, growing up in the same area, can build rapport.
And that rapport makes it easier to uncover things.
Yes, because trust levels go up. The anecdote about the CEO in Ohio is a great example. When the negotiator used the word stewardship, it resonated deeply with the CEO's Christian values. That wasn't just rapport. It tapped into a core motivation, a black swan about why he did business. Mentioning shared values or experiences can make the other person feel understood.
So actively looking for those little connections can actually create an opening for deeper truths to emerge.
Definitely. It lowers defenses, fosters a sense of we're on the same side in some way, making them more likely to share what really matters to them.
And once you grasp those deeper motivations, their hopes and dreams, how do you use that insight effectively?
The book suggests that once you understand their religion, their fundamental aspirations, you can frame your proposal so it connects with those bigger goals. People want to believe they're capable of achieving great things. If you can link your offer to their unmet goals and show you believe they can reach them, they're much more likely to come along. Think Ted Leonsis and Immortal Moments.
Tapping into that higher purpose, there's also that bit about religion as a reason.
Right, referencing that old Xerox copy machine study. People are more likely to comply if you give reason, any reason, using the word because. But for bigger things, the book argues, using their own values, their religion, as the reason is much more powerful. Like with the Christian CEO example, responding to a low offer by referencing the duty of stewardship.
Okay, now let's tackle that phrase. They're crazy. It's often a clue. What's the core message there?
It's basically saying that when you find yourself thinking someone's negotiating behavior is just completely irrational or crazy, that's often a defense mechanism. It's easier to dismiss it than to understand it, but in negotiation, that crazy behavior is usually a huge flashing sign pointing towards a hidden factor, a black swan.
So instead of writing them off, lean in. Try to figure out why it seems crazy.
Exactly. It's an invitation to investigate. The book highlights 3 common mistakes we make that lead to this "they're crazy" conclusion. Mistake number 1, they are ill-informed.
Right, the example of the ex-employee claiming commissions. The exec thought the demand was nuts.
Yeah, totally irrational from the company's perspective. But the black swan. The employees simply didn't have the right numbers. They were working off bad info. Once the company shared the correct audit data,
The issue evaporated. The lesson being, find out what they don't know and maybe you can provide the missing piece.
precisely. Mistake number 2, they are constrained. What's that about?
This is when their hands are tied in ways you can't see. Maybe they have strict orders from legal, or they made a promise to someone else, or maybe they just don't have the authority to agree, even if they want to.
Like the Coca-Cola example. The contact person just went silent. Seemed totally irrational, potentially damaging the relationship.
But the Black Swan was internal politics. He'd lost his influence, couldn't deliver anymore, and maybe was too embarrassed or constrained to say so directly.
Exactly. Hidden constraints making rational behavior impossible. And mistake number 3, which loops back to Griffin, they have other interests.
Yes. Griffin's interest wasn't money or freedom. It was something much darker and completely unexpected. But other interests can be less dramatic, but still hidden, right? Like maybe they care more about when they pay an invoice than the total amount for cash flow reasons. Or they just really want to feel respected in the process.
Absolutely. It could be about fairness, reputation, internal relationships, timing, all sorts of things that aren't the main point on the table. Your job is to sniff out these hidden drivers, these black swans.
Okay, so given all that, what are the practical ways the book suggests we can actually find these things? How do we get better at spotting them?
A big one is get FaceTime. The book really pushes for in-person interaction. It argues, pretty convincingly I think, that even 10 minutes face-to-face can reveal more than days of back-and-forth emails.
Why is that?
It's just much harder to keep your guard up completely in person. You leak information through nonverbals, tone of voice, micro-expressions. Email lets you craft the perfect guarded response. Face-to-face is more revealing. Remember the Coca-Cola guy finally admitting his lack of influence over dinner?
Good point. Harder to hide. What else?
Observe unguarded moments. Pay really close attention at the very beginning and very end of meetings, the small talk phase, or during breaks, interruptions, meals. That's when the professional mask tends to slip a little.
People let their guard down when they think the official part is over or paused.
Exactly. Those informal moments can be incredibly insightful. And then there's that powerful idea we touched on. When it doesn't make sense, there's sense to be made.
Seeing the crazy as an opportunity. The MBA student example really drives this home.
It really does. Selling a fully occupied building, a cash cow, right next to a growing university, it just screamed irrational. Why would anyone do that?
It looked like a terrible business decision on the surface.
Totally. But the student didn't just dismiss it. They labeled it. It seems like this functions like a dorm. And even mislabeled the probe. It seems like you must doubt the future market. They kept digging into the why.
And eventually uncovered the Black Swan. The seller was desperate. Needed cash from this winner to prop up losers elsewhere.
Bingo. And that hidden financial pressure was the key. Knowing that Black Swan completely changed the negotiation dynamics and allowed the student to get a fantastic deal, it shows that digging into the illogical can be incredibly profitable.
It's a great story. Now, the chapter finishes on a broader note about overcoming fear, particularly the fear of conflict. What's the final message there?
It's a really important point. The book acknowledges that most of us, well, we don't really like conflict. We want to get along. But that desire can make us shy away from necessary disagreements, make us settle for less, create these sort of wimp-win deals where nobody really gets what they need.
So avoiding conflict isn't always the best strategy.
No. The book reframes it. The situation is the adversary, not the person across from you. They're actually your partner in trying to solve the problem. And sometimes having an honest, open conflict about goals or methods can actually spark creativity and lead to better, more collaborative solutions.
It's not about being aggressive or bullying.
None at all. Pushing for what you believe is fair and right, if done honestly and respectfully, isn't selfish. The whole approach in the book isn't about crushing the other side. It's about uncovering value and finding ways for both sides to get more of what they want. The final plea is really, Don't avoid honest conflict in any part of life.
Because facing it constructively leads to better outcomes.
Yes, being a great negotiator and, frankly, just a decent human being involves listening well, speaking clearly and with empathy, treating people with respect, and being honest about what you want and what your limits are. Life is full of small conflicts, and handling them well, openly, and honestly can actually be really productive and even beautiful. Don't run from them.
Okay, so if we were to boil down the key lessons for finding black swans, what are the main takeaways?
All right, let's recap. 1, black swans are these powerful unknown unknowns, game changers.
Yeah.
2, finding them is tough because we have blind spots, we don't know the right questions. 3, key tactics. Let your knowns guide you, but don't let them blind you. Stay flexible. 4, black swans are leverage multipliers. They impact positive, negative, and normative leverage. 5, really try to understand the other side's religion, their core worldview. 6, review everything, listen intensely, maybe use backup listeners. 7, use the similarity principle to build trust. 8, treat irrational behavior not as craziness, but as a clue. It often points to bad info, constraints, or hidden interests. 9, get FaceTime whenever you can.
Yeah.
And 10, watch those unguarded moments like a hawk.
That's a fantastic summary. This whole discussion on Find the Black Swan and really the entire book has been incredibly insightful. It's amazing how these ideas, born from high-stakes, hostage situations, apply so broadly.
It really is. And I genuinely hope that for you listening, this has given you some new perspectives, maybe some concrete tools you can use to uncover that hidden information in your own negotiations, whether it's at work, at home, wherever.
Yeah, definitely pause and think about your current situations. What assumptions are you making? What might you be missing? What could those black swans be?
It's a powerful lens to look through. Well, on that note, that brings us to the end of this deep dive and our journey through this book. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a real pleasure unpacking all of this with you. Definitely stay tuned for our next deep dives. We'll keep exploring fascinating sources and ideas. You won't want to miss it.